Recently, I interviewed Brandon Sasso of the National Journal on net neutrality and the recent January 14th ruling and the implications it may have on us as a whole. The January 14th ruling was where the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit struck down the FCC's open internet order in the case of Verizon versus the FCC. Basically, this court just killed net neutrality. Internet service providers are now able to block any website or app that they want at any given time. This could have major implications on the internet as we know it today. The FCC has the ability to change this. You have the power to make your voice heard. Sign up today for the free press newsletters on SaveTheInternet.com.
Advocates of net neutrality would like, they think that it should apply that, you shouldn't be some apps shouldn't be faster or slower than other ones, that anytime you're trying to access the internet, whether that's from your tablet or your phone or computer, that websites, whether they're gigantic corporations or some small blog or whatever, or startup, should all be treated equally, be on the same level playing field. The FCC issued its rules in 2010, and then Verizon sued. And just to be clear, Verizon has a FiOS cable broadband business, so they wouldn't really be affected. Their wireless business, most people think of, wouldn't really be affected, but they provide home internet through FiOS. So they sued, saying the FCC doesn't have the authority to pass these rules. The Congress never, the FCC can only really do what Congress told them they can do. So the case went to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and the decision came down in January. And the court, I think most people expected that the FCC would lose, especially based on the way the oral argument went. But what the decision said was, one of Verizon's arguments was that basically the FCC doesn't have the authority to regulate broadband providers at all. The Congress never gave the FCC the authority. The FCC can regulate telephone companies and the cell phone companies, but it can't regulate broadband providers, according to Verizon. And then the court actually ruled in favor of the FCC on that question, which was the much broader question. And so, in a way, the FCC won on that sort of bigger issue. But on the more particular but Verizon, a backup argument that Verizon had was that the FCC, the rules are essentially treating broadband providers like what are called common carriers. And so common carrier regulations, common carrier applies to telephone companies, it applies to, I think, airlines and rail providers, and the idea is you have to provide equal service to everyone. And the FCC explicitly, by law, cannot treat broadband providers as common carriers. So they said that essentially what net neutrality is, or it's basically the same thing as common carrier regulations, and therefore they struck down the rules. DC is kind of going back to the drawing board now to try to redo the rules in a way that uses this broad authority as long as it doesn't run afoul of this common carrier ban, if that makes sense. They're going to try to rewrite the rules in a way that achieves the goals that they originally wanted, but in a way that is not the same exact thing as the common carrier idea, where you have to treat everyone equally. So I think the question is how much the Comcast or whoever really is interested in harming these websites. I think my opinion is some of the people like Free Press and others kind of overblow some of the concerns here, but their nightmare scenario would be that the internet sort of becomes like cable television, having sort of tiers of programming where so for a certain amount you can get email and search, and for a little bit more you can get Facebook and Twitter, and for the most you can get YouTube, or just that the Comcast would go around blocking a bunch of websites. Like websites would have to go to Comcast or whoever and request permission or pay some amount of money just to get access to users. I don't really think that these companies are all that interested in that. I do think that they'd like. So the thing is, Netflix takes up 85% of all data that travels over the internet is Netflix. From the point of view of these broadband providers, they spent billions of dollars building these networks, and now Netflix is making billions of dollars clogging up all these networks, so they feel like, Netflix is kind of getting a free ride, and sure, they would like to, they'd like their customers to, I think, enjoy the benefits of paying for internet service, which includes Netflix, but they'd like to start charging Netflix for that. And so I think that's, Free Press and other people are concerned that that'll create a unfair playing field where, some companies like Netflix might be able to pay for it, might be able to afford that, whereas other companies, smaller radio startups might not be